Okay, so today we're going to look at the application of trig in some of the word problems. These are very similar to the word problems that we've studied before, in that our goal is to come up with an equation that we can differentiate. If we differentiate them, we'll have that rate of change that makes these questions special. The only difference in these questions is in the ones we had done before, it was probably a side length that was changing, like a ladder falling down a wall or an area changing when you drop a pebble into the water. For these ones, the big difference will be an angle that is changing. So we're going to look at the first example then. TV camera located 1,000 meters from the site of a rocket launch records this event. The rocket is launched vertically, and its elevation in meters at liftoff is s equals 200 t squared. So right there is a function that describes how it takes off. How rapidly must the camera angle be increased in order to maintain a view of the rocket 5 seconds after liftoff? So we know at the beginning of this scenario, the camera is probably going to have to tilt up pretty quickly because the rocket takes off really fast. But as the rocket gets further away, you don't need to change your angle as much because it's so far away that you're able to capture it. In all of these, drawing a picture is huge. Okay, so we want to try and get a decent looking picture here. So I'm going to say that the rocket sort of takes off here, and down here is me with my little camera. I have the old-fashioned camera, like that. And the rocket is taking off like this. It's going straight up. And this is like my camera angle. And here's my rocket. Now try not to get distracted by my amazing artistic ability. So as I mentioned, the thing that makes these different is this angle part. And all the other ones we didn't really talk about angles. Here we are. Now a couple of other information we can fill in. It says the camera is located 1,000 meters from the site. So it starts off here at 1,000 meters. Oops. This apparently is called S, which is for height or displacement. So apparently this side is S, excuse me. And then we need a label for this third side, which is this imaginary camera angle or vision or whatever. I'm just going to call it H for hypotenuse. Or Q. You don't like H? Why? Okay. Jake says it has to be a different one. So I'm going to call it X, because that's even more boring. All right. Now, you'll recall that we have all these variables, and we don't know which ones we need or not. So we've got these ones. I'm going to call this one, I'm going to call this D, this side D, for distance and how far we're away. So each variable or each side has its own exact value, and it has its rate of change. So it's derivative. So things like D is 1,000, but it also has its rate of change. Oops. So I'm going to call this one dd over dt. How fast is this bottom distance changing? It's not changing, so what number is it? 0. Good. Now we go off to the other ones. we've got side S. And we've got side ds by t dt, which is how fast it's changing. And then we've got side x and dx by dt. But what's unique in these questions is we have another variable. We don't just have the three sides in the scenario. What other variable do we have? Yeah, we have theta. So we've got theta, and we even have the derivative of that, d theta by dt. So these are all the possible things that we may or may not use. I'm not going to go off and find them all yet. I'm only going to find the ones that I know I'm going to need. Okay? So that might occur later. But the one thing is, I'm going to go back and read the question and see that the question says, how rapidly must the camera angle be increasing in order to maintain it? So I want to know how fast the angle is changing. Of all these variables that I've listed down here, which one is that? That's right. So this is my unknown. Okay? So if you think back to the questions we did before, we picked some formula or equation or whatever, and we differentiated it. Here, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to pick some formula, except now it's going to be a trig ratio. But we've got to make sure we pick a trig ratio that's got theta in it. Okay, well, all trig ratios will have theta in it. And some other side. And we have the luxury, because we know all the trig ratios, we know sine, cos, and tan, we can pick whichever one's going to make our life easier. So the little note that I'm going to put here that you wouldn't write in every single time says, when picking a trig ratio, use the fixed side and a known rate of change. So when picking a trig ratio, use the fixed side and a known rate of change. So here's the reason why. If we use the fixed side, the derivative of it is really easy. So it's going to make our life easier. Okay, we could use x, but it's going to be a challenge to figure out, first off, what x is. And also, its rate of change we don't know. Right? But the fixed side, we know the rate of change, it's 0. Then we also need to know another side in which we know the rate of change. Now in this particular question, it doesn't come out and tell you another side's rate of change, but we can figure it out. This x is a challenging rate of change to figure out, but s, we actually have a formula that tells us how that moves. It's right here. So my advice to you then is, at least I can figure out the rate of change from that formula. I'll have to do some work for it, but at least that side here is my known rate of change, or at least I can get to it, and my fixed side in this particular case is d. So if I'm picking a trig ratio, which one am I going to use? I need to use the one that uses s and d. So which trig ratio is going to do that? Tan. Tan is being the opposite over the adjacent. So the ratio I'm going to use is tan theta equals opposite. And which side's the opposite? S. And the adjacent is D. Of course, we can make this a little bit nicer because there is some known stuff. We do know 1,000, and I think pretty quickly we could figure out what S is as well.